The sky turned dark at noon. Minho looked up from his workbench and saw them coming. Dragons, hundreds of them. Their massive wings blocked out the sun as they flew toward the human colony on the edge of explored space. Minho dropped his wrench. He had seen dragons before, but only from a distance. They never came close to human settlements. They were proud creatures who lived in the mountains far from any other species. But now they were coming straight toward the colony. The alarm bells rang across the settlement. People ran to their homes. Children were pulled inside by worried parents. The colony defense team grabbed their weapons and rushed to the walls. Everyone feared an attack, but Minho noticed something strange. The dragons were not flying in attack formation. They looked tired. Their wings moved slowly. Some of them were limping in the air. These were not dragons coming to fight. These were dragons in trouble. The largest dragon landed first. His scales were deep red like burning coals. He was as big as a building. His eyes were ancient and filled with sadness. Behind him, more dragons landed. They formed a circle around the colony square. Their huge bodies covered every open space. People watched from windows and doorways. Guards kept their weapons ready but did not fire. Something about the dragon's behavior made everyone pause. The red dragon lowered his massive head. He brought his face down close to the ground. This was a gesture of respect. Dragons never bowed to anyone. They were the oldest and most powerful beings in the galaxy. Yet here was their leader, bowing in the dirt of a human colony. Minho walked forward. He did not know why. His legs just moved. Something told him these creatures needed help, and he was the kind of person who could not ignore someone in need. The dragon's voice was deep and rumbling like thunder. Human. We are the herd of Varathos. I am called Valtheron. We come seeking aid. The word shocked everyone who heard them. Dragons asking humans for help? It seemed impossible. Minho stopped a few feet from the dragon's enormous head. Up close, he could see the creature was old. Very old, scars covered his scales. His eyes held thousands of years of memory. What kind of aid? Minho asked. Valtheron lifted his head slightly. Our eggs are dying. Our species faces extinction. We have tried everything we know. Nothing works. We have watched your kind for many years. You solve problems in ways we do not understand. Ways that seem impossible. We need that gift now. Other dragons moved closer. A blue female dragon spoke next. Her voice was softer but filled with pain. Our eggs are buried in the sacred mountain. It is where we have laid our young for 10,000 years. But something has changed. A barrier surrounds the nesting chamber. We cannot pass through it. We cannot reach our eggs. A green dragon added. We have used our strongest fire. We have called upon ancient magic. We have tried to dig around it. Nothing works. The barrier remains, and inside our eggs grow cold. We can feel them dying. Minho listened carefully. He looked at the dragons around him. These mighty creatures were desperate. Their pride was broken. They had come to humans because they had no other choice. How long do the eggs have? Minho asked. Weeks, perhaps less, Valtheron said. Without our fire to warm them, without our presence, they will not hatch. The hatchlings will die before they ever see the world. Minho thought about this. A barrier that dragons could not break. That was serious. Dragons were incredibly strong. If their magic and power could not break through, it must be something unusual. What does this barrier look like? He asked. A yellow dragon stepped forward. It shimmers like water in air. It makes a sound that hurts our ears. When we touch it, it pushes back with great force. It is like nothing we have seen before. How long has it been there? It appeared 3 moon cycles ago, Valtheron said. We were away from the mountain, flying in the outer territories. When we returned, the barrier was there. We do not know what created it or why. Minho rubbed his chin. He was just a mechanic. He fixed machines and equipment. He was not a scientist or a soldier, but he was good at solving problems. He looked at things differently than other people. Maybe that was what the dragons needed. I need to see it, Minho said. I need to examine this barrier myself. I cannot help you if I do not understand what we are dealing with, the dragons murmured among themselves. Some seemed unhappy. Why must you see it? A silver dragon asked. Can you not simply tell us what to do? Minho shook his head. I am not a wizard. I do not have magic words or spells. I solve problems by looking at them carefully, by testing and trying different things. I need to be there. Valtheron studied Minho with his ancient eyes. The dragon seemed to be measuring the human's worth. Finally, he nodded. Very well. You will come with us to the mountain. But know this, human. If you fail, our species dies. That weight will be yours to carry. I understand, Minho said simply. The colony administrator, a woman named Yunji, ran out from the main building. Minho, what are you doing? You cannot go with them. Minho turned to her. They need help, Yunji. Their children are dying. They are dragons. They have lived for thousands of years. Why would they need a mechanic? I do not know, Minho admitted. But they asked, and I have to try. Yunji looked at the dragons, then back at Minho. She knew him well. She knew that once he decided to help someone, nothing would change his mind. She sighed. Take equipment. Take scanners. Take whatever you need. And take Heejin with you. If this is some kind of biological problem, you will need her expertise. Heejin was the colony's xenobiologist. She studied alien life forms. She was smart and brave. When Yunji called her, she came running with her equipment pack already on her back. I heard everything, Heejin said. I am ready to go. Minho smiled. Good. We will need all the help we can get. Valtheron watched this exchange. You bring another? A female? She is a scientist, Minho explained. She studies living things. She might see something I miss. The dragon seemed satisfied with this answer. Then both of you will come. We leave now. Time is running out for our young. Minho and Heejin gathered their equipment quickly. Scanners, tools, sample collectors, portable computers, and power cells. Everything they might need to analyze an unknown barrier. As they prepared to leave, other colonists came out to watch. Some looked worried. Some looked amazed. Children pointed at the dragons with wide eyes. Minho climbed onto Valtheron's back. The dragon's scales were warm under his hands. Heejin climbed up behind him. She held on tight as the massive creature prepared to take flight. Hold firmly, Valtheron rumbled. The flight will be long. With a powerful thrust of his legs, the red dragon launched into the air. His wings spread wide and caught the wind. The other dragons followed. Soon the entire herd was flying toward the mountains in the distance. Minho looked down at the colony growing smaller below. He wondered what he had gotten himself into. But there was no turning back now. Somewhere ahead was a mystery that needed solving, and if he could not solve it, an entire species would disappear forever. The wind rushed past his face as they flew higher. The mountains grew larger on the horizon. Minho's mind was already working on the problem. A barrier that appeared suddenly, that resisted magic and force, that made sound and pushed back when touched. What could create something like that? He did not have answers yet, but he would find them. He had to. The dragons were counting on him, and Minho never let anyone down if he could help it. The flight continued into the afternoon. The sun moved across the sky, and ahead the sacred mountain waited with its secrets. The mountain was enormous. It rose from the ground like a giant tooth, its peak hidden in clouds. The dragons circled around it, their wings catching the afternoon light. Minho could see caves dotting the mountainside. These were dragon homes carved into the rock over thousands of years. Valtheron landed on a wide ledge halfway up the mountain. The other dragons settled around them, their claws scraping against stone. Minho and Heejin climbed down from the red dragon's back. Their legs were shaky from the long flight. The barrier is inside, Valtheron said. He pointed with his massive head toward a large cave entrance. Follow me. The cave was dark and deep. Dragons did not need light to see, but humans did. Minho pulled out a light from his pack. The beam cut through the darkness, showing smooth walls carved with ancient symbols. They walked for several minutes. The tunnel sloped downward. The air grew warmer. Finally, they emerged into a huge chamber, and there it was. The barrier. It covered the far end of the chamber like a wall of shimmering light. Blue and green colors swirled across its surface. It made a humming sound that Minho could feel in his chest. The sound was steady like a heartbeat. Beyond the barrier, Minho could see the dragon eggs. They were huge, each one as tall as a person. Their shells looked like crystal, with colors swirling inside them. There were dozens of them arranged in careful patterns on the chamber floor. Beautiful, Heejin whispered beside him. But Minho noticed something else. The eggs looked dim. Their inner light was fading. They should have been bright and warm, but instead they seemed cold and dying. How close can we get? Minho asked. A blue dragon stepped forward. You can touch it if you wish. It will not harm you, but it will not let you pass. Minho walked toward the barrier slowly. He held out his hand. When his fingers got close, he felt a tingling sensation. Not painful, but strange, like touching something alive. He pressed his palm against the surface. The barrier pushed back gently but firmly. It was solid, but it also felt flexible, like pushing against a strong wind. The humming sound grew louder when he touched it. Hyejin knelt down and pulled out a scanner. She pointed it at the barrier and watched the readings on her small screen. Her eyes widened. "Minho, look at this." Minho moved beside her. The scanner showed waves of energy pulsing through the barrier. The pattern was regular and complex. "That is not natural," he said. "No," Hyejin agreed. "This is technology. Very advanced technology." The dragons around them stirred. Their tails swished with agitation. Valtheron moved closer, his huge head looming over the humans. "What do you mean, technology?" "This is a curse. Dark magic." Minho shook his head. "No, magic does not show up on energy scanners. This barrier is a machine, or at least it is created by a machine. See these energy patterns? They are too regular, too precise. Nature and magic are more random." Another dragon, this one covered in silver scales, snorted smoke from his nostrils. "Impossible. We have lived in this mountain for 3,000 years. There is no machine here, no technology. Only stone and dragon fire." "Maybe you did not know it was here," Hyejin suggested gently. "Maybe it was hidden. Or maybe it has been here longer than 3,000 years. The dragons did not like this idea. They muttered and growled among themselves. They believed they knew everything about their sacred mountain. The thought that something had been hidden from them was troubling. Minho stood and walked along the barrier. He studied it from different angles. He pulled out more tools from his pack. An electromagnetic reader, a spectrum analyzer, a thermal sensor. Each tool gave him more information. "The energy field is strongest at the center," he said, pointing. "It gets slightly weaker at the edges. The frequency is consistent across the entire surface. And look here." He showed Hyejin his thermal sensor. "The barrier is generating heat. Not much, but some. That means it is using power. Power from where?" Hyejin asked. "That is the question," Minho said. He knelt and examined the floor where the barrier met the stone. "If this is a defensive system, it needs a power source. Batteries, a reactor, something." He pulled out a small drill and carefully made a tiny hole in the floor near the barrier's edge. The dragons watched him nervously. He inserted a probe into the hole and checked the readings. "There, underground. I am detecting a power signature about 10 feet below us." Valtheron's eyes narrowed. "You think something is buried beneath the mountain?" "I think whatever created this barrier is old," Minho said. "Very old. Maybe older than your herd, maybe older than dragons entirely." This statement caused an uproar among the dragons. They roared and argued. Some refused to believe it. Others seemed frightened. The idea that their sacred mountain held secrets they never knew was difficult to accept. Hyejin held up her hand. "Please, fighting will not help. Let us focus on the eggs. That is what matters right now." The dragons quieted. She was right. Their pride could wait. Their children could not. Minho circled the entire barrier, taking measurements. He recorded the humming sound with audio equipment. He collected samples of dust from the floor. He worked methodically, carefully, like he was diagnosing a sick machine. Hours passed. The dragons grew impatient. They were used to solving problems with strength and fire. Watching this small human poke at the barrier with tiny tools seemed pointless to them. "Why do you not simply break it?" a young green dragon demanded. "Use explosives. Use your human weapons." Minho looked at the young dragon calmly. "Because I do not know what would happen. This barrier might be protecting something. Or it might be protecting us from something. If I break it the wrong way, I might make things worse. I might damage the eggs." The green dragon subsided, looking ashamed. Hyejin was examining the eggs through the barrier using her scanner. "Minho, the egg's temperature is dropping. They are at 40 degrees now. Dragon's eggs need to be kept at 60 degrees minimum to develop properly." "How long before critical failure?" Minho asked. 2 weeks. "Maybe 3 if we are lucky." Minho nodded grimly. Not much time. He needed to work faster. He sat down with his portable computer and started analyzing all the data he had collected. Energy readings, sound frequencies, thermal patterns, chemical compositions. He looked for patterns, for clues, for anything that might tell him how to shut down the barrier. Valtheron lay down nearby. The old dragon watched Minho work with curious eyes. "You are different from other humans I have seen," the dragon said quietly. Minho did not look up from his computer. How so? You are not afraid. You do not waste time with useless words. You simply work. Being afraid does not help, Minho said. And talking too much wastes time we do not have. Why do you help us? Valtheron asked. We are not your species. Our problems are not your problems, Minho finally looked up. He met the dragon's ancient gaze. I help because you asked. And because children are dying. That is enough reason. The dragon made a sound deep in his throat. It might have been approval. Your species is strange. Weak in body but strong in spirit. I am beginning to understand why you survive in this galaxy. Minho returned to his work. He played back the recording of the barrier's hum. He slowed it down, sped it up, reversed it, and then he heard something interesting. Yejin, come listen to this. She moved beside him. He played the reversed sound. It was musical, almost like a melody. The barrier is not just making noise, Minho said excitedly. It is communicating, or at least it is producing a signal. A signal for what? Maybe a key? Maybe a password? I do not know yet. But this is not random. He played different sections of the recording. See? The pattern repeats every 17 seconds. That is too precise to be accidental. Yejin's eyes lit up with understanding. So if we can figure out what the signal means, we might be able to turn off the barrier. Exactly. Minho worked through the night. The dragons brought them food and water. They tried to make the humans comfortable. Some dragons had never been this close to humans before. They were surprised by how fragile humans seemed. No scales, no claws, no fire. Yet these small creatures never stopped working. Doyen, another colonist, arrived before dawn. He had flown to the mountain with supplies in a small shuttle. He was Minho's friend and a skilled electronics expert. Yunji sent me, he said as he climbed down from his shuttle. She said you might need help. Good timing, Minho said. I need someone who understands communication systems. Together they set up equipment around the barrier. Speakers, receivers, signal processors. They were going to try something that the dragons thought was crazy. They were going to talk to the barrier. Doyun programmed a computer to analyze the barrier's humming signal. He broke it down into components: frequency, amplitude, modulation. He fed all this data into a program that looked for patterns. It is definitely artificial, Doyen confirmed. This signal is carrying information. I just need to figure out what kind. While Doyun worked on decoding the signal, Minho examined the floor again. He used ground-penetrating radar to map what was beneath them. And he found something amazing. There is a structure down there, he said, showing the others his screen, a chamber, and inside it some kind of device. That must be what is generating the barrier. Hyejin frowned. Can we dig down to it? Maybe, but that would take days. And we might damage something important. Valtheron approached. What if we dig carefully? Dragons are very good at moving stone. Minho considered this. It is risky, but it might be our best option if we. Do-Yun stared at his computer screen. He had been working for 6 hours straight. His eyes were red and tired, but he refused to rest. The decoded signal pattern displayed across his screen in waves of color. I think I have something, he said finally. Minho rushed over. Hyejin joined them. Even some of the dragons moved closer, trying to see the small human screens. The signal is a lock, Doyen explained. Think of it like a door that only opens with the right key. The barrier is broadcasting the lock's pattern. We need to send back the correct response. What kind of response? Hyejin asked. That is the problem. I do not know yet. The signal is encoded in a language I have never seen. It is ancient. Really ancient, Baltheron rumbled behind them. How ancient? Maybe 100,000 years old. Maybe more. Whatever civilization built this system is long gone. The dragons exchanged troubled looks. 100,000 years ago, even their oldest legends did not reach that far back. The thought that something existed before them was disturbing. Minho studied the patterns on Doyen's screen. Can you play the signal backwards through a speaker? Backwards? Why? Just try it. Sometimes old systems use simple tricks. Mirror codes, reverse patterns. Doyen set up the equipment. He connected a powerful speaker to his computer. The speaker faced the barrier. He played the recorded signal in reverse at the same frequency the barrier was broadcasting. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the barrier flickered. Just a small flicker, barely noticeable, but it was something. The dragons saw it too. They stirred with excitement. Again, Valtheron commanded. Do it again! Doyen played the reversed signal again. This time the flicker lasted longer. The barrier's humming changed pitch slightly. It was responding. We are onto something, Minho said. But it is not enough. We need more than just a reversed signal. Doyen, can you modulate the frequency? Try shifting it up and down. Doyen's fingers flew across his keyboard. He created a program that would play the reversed signal while slowly changing its frequency. The speaker emitted a strange warbling sound. The barrier flickered again. Then again. The colors swirling across its surface moved faster. The humming grew louder, then softer, then louder again. It was like the barrier was confused. Keep going, Hajin urged. Something is happening. For 2 more hours they experimented. They tried different frequencies, different amplitudes. They played multiple signals at once. They tried patterns suggested by the mathematical analysis of the barrier's structure. Nothing worked completely. The barrier would flicker and respond, but it never went down. It was like they were knocking on a door but did not know the right way to open it. Minho sat back, frustrated. He looked at the dying eggs beyond the barrier. Their light was dimmer now. Time was running out and they were so close but still so far. A small dragon approached. She was young, barely 50 years old, with scales that shimmered like pearls. May I say something? She asked quietly. The older dragons looked at her with surprise. Young dragons were expected to stay silent when elders were talking. But Valtheron nodded. Speak, Jiwan. The young dragon looked nervous, but she continued. I have been watching the humans work. They try many things. They fail many times. But they do not give up. They just try something different. Maybe we should help them try more things faster. Minho looked at her with interest. What do you mean? You are only 3 humans. But we are many dragons. Tell us what to try. We can test many ideas at the same time. It was a simple suggestion, but it was brilliant. Minho had been thinking like a human, working with a small team. But he had an entire herd of dragons willing to help. She is right, Minho said, standing up. We need to work smarter. Doyen, can you make copies of your program? Can you set up multiple speakers? Yes, I have spare equipment in the shuttle. Good. We will set up speakers all around the barrier. Different positions, different angles. Maybe the position matters. Maybe we need to send the signal from multiple directions at once. The dragons immediately began to help. They carried equipment. They held speakers in position with their claws. They followed instructions carefully. Within an hour, they had 10 speakers arranged around the barrier in a circle. Doyen programmed each speaker to play a slightly different variation of the signal. When I activate this, all 10 speakers will play at once, he explained. Each one with a different frequency shift. Do it, Minho said. Doyen pressed the button. 10 speakers came to life at once. The chamber filled with strange harmonics. The sounds overlapped and interfered with each other, creating complex patterns. The barrier reacted immediately. It flickered wildly. The colors changed rapidly. The humming became a roar. For a moment, Minho thought they had succeeded. But then the barrier stabilized again. Still there, still blocking the way to the eggs, but now they knew they were very close. The barrier had reacted more strongly than ever before. We need more power, Hijin said. Or more speakers, or both. The shuttle has a main power generator, Doyen said. I can connect it to the speaker array. But if we push too much power through the system, we might damage the speakers. Or worse, we might damage whatever is controlling the barrier underground. Minho thought about this carefully. It was a risk. But doing nothing was also a risk. The eggs were dying. They had maybe 10 days left. Do it, he decided. Connect the generator. But do it slowly. We will increase the power gradually. If something starts to go wrong, we shut it down immediately. Doyen and several dragons worked together to run power cables from the shuttle to the speaker array. It took hours. The cables had to be thick and strong enough to carry large amounts of electricity. The dragons helped dig trenches to protect the cables. They moved rocks that were too heavy for humans to lift. While they worked, Minho noticed something. The dragons were changing. At first, they had been skeptical of human methods. They had thought human technology was weak compared to dragon magic and strength. But now they were learning. They asked questions. They wanted to understand how the equipment worked. They made suggestions. One large bronze dragon named Taiho approached Minho. I have been thinking, the dragon said. The barrier appeared 3 months ago. You said it is very old technology. What if something woke it up? Woke it up? You mean activated it? Yes, what if it was sleeping all this time? What if something we did triggered it? Minho considered this. Did anything unusual happen 3 months ago? Anything different? Taiho thought for a moment. There was an earthquake. Small, but we felt it. It came from deep underground. An earthquake, Minho repeated. He looked at Hyejin. What if the earthquake damaged something? What if it triggered an automatic defense system? Hyejin's eyes widened. That would make sense. If this system is really 100,000 years old, it might have been damaged by geological shifts. The earthquake could have caused a malfunction. So we are not dealing with a locked door, Minho said slowly, working through the logic. We are dealing with a broken security system that thinks it is under attack. This changed everything. If the barrier was malfunctioning, then trying to input the correct code might not work. They might need to reset the system instead. Or shut it down completely. Doyen finished connecting the power generator. Ready when you are, he called out. Wait, Minho said. He explained his new theory to Doyen. Instead of trying to send the right signal, what if we try to overload the system? Force it to reboot? That is dangerous, Doyen warned. If the system has fail-safes, overloading it might make it lock down permanently, or it might explode. But if it is already broken, we might not have another choice. They debated for several minutes. The dragons listened carefully to the discussion. Finally, Valtheron made the decision. Do it, we trust you, humans. You have tried everything else. If this is our last chance, then we take it, Minho nodded. Everyone stand back, way back. If this goes wrong, there might be an energy discharge. The dragons retreated to the tunnel entrance. Minho, Hyejin, and Doyen stayed near the controls, but they wore protective gear. Doyen's hand hovered over the power controls. Start at 20% power, Minho instructed. Increase by 10% every 30 seconds. I will watch the barrier. If I see anything dangerous, I will signal you to stop. Understood. Doyen activated the system. The speakers hummed to life with 20% power. The reverse signal played through all 10 speakers at once. The barrier flickered but held. 30 seconds passed. 30%. Doyen called out, increasing the power. The barrier flickered more rapidly. The colors swirled faster. The humming grew louder. 40%. Now the barrier was pulsing visibly. Light and dark. On and off. The humming became a shriek that hurt human ears. The dragons could hear frequencies the humans could not, and they pressed their claws against their heads. 50%. The barrier started to crack. Not physically, but energetically. Lines of darkness appeared in the shimmering field. They spread like cracks in ice. Keep going. Minho shouted over the noise. 60%. The entire chamber shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Some of the smaller rocks tumbled down the walls. The barrier was fighting against the overload, but it was losing. 70%. One section of the barrier collapsed. Just a small section, about 2 feet wide. But it was a hole. An actual hole. The dragons gathered around their eggs, breathing fire gently over the cold crystalline shells. They tried to warm them, to bring back the light that had faded. But it was not working. The eggs remained cold and dim. Hyejin checked the temperature readings again. They are at 35 degrees now. Even colder than before. They need to be brought up to 60 degrees and held there steadily. The dragon's fire is too hot and too inconsistent. Valtheron heard this. The great red dragon turned to face the humans, and for the first time, Minho saw real fear in those ancient eyes. What are you saying? That our fire cannot save our own children? Your fire can save them, Hyejin said gently. But not directly. You are too hot. Dragon fire burns at thousands of degrees. These eggs need gentle, steady warmth, and they need it constantly without variation. A blue dragon named Yuna stepped forward. She was one of the eggs' mothers. Then what can we do? How can we save them? Minho looked at the eggs. He looked at the desperate dragons. He made a decision that he knew would shock everyone. We need to take them to the human colony. Silence filled the chamber. The dragons stared at him as if he had suggested throwing the eggs into space. Take their precious eggs to a human settlement? Impossible, unthinkable, no, roared a large gray dragon. These eggs are sacred. They will not be touched by human hands. They will not leave the sacred mountain. Other dragons joined in the protest. Their voices echoed through the chamber, loud and angry. They trusted humans enough to help solve the barrier problem. But this was too much. Their eggs were their most precious treasures. No dragon would willingly give them to another species. Valtheron raised his head and let out a thundering roar that silenced all the other dragons. Quiet, let the human speak. He has earned that much. The chamber fell silent again. All eyes turned to Minho. I understand your fear, Minho said calmly. These are your children. But listen to what I am telling you. We have equipment at the colony. Medical incubators. Temperature control systems. We can create the exact environment these eggs need. We can monitor each egg constantly. If anything goes wrong, we can fix it immediately. And we should trust you with this? The gray dragon challenged. You who are not dragon? You who have no eggs of your own? No, Minho agreed. You should not trust me because I am human. You should trust me because I have not failed you yet. You came to us for help. We broke the barrier when you could not. Now I am offering the next solution. Taiho, the bronze dragon who had helped earlier, spoke up. The human is right. We asked for their help. We cannot now refuse it because we do not like what they suggest. But our eggs, Yuna cried. How can we let them go? You will not be letting them go, Hijin said. You will come with them. The colony has space. You can stay with your eggs. You can watch over them every moment. We will just provide the equipment and knowledge to keep them alive. The dragons argued among themselves for a long time. Some wanted to agree. Others refused. The debate grew heated. Ancient grudges and territorial instincts made many dragons resist the idea of living among humans, even temporarily. Finally, Valtheron made his decision. As the herd leader, his word was law. We will do as the humans suggest. We will take the eggs to their colony. But know this, humans. If even one egg dies, if even one hatchling is harmed, there will be consequences. The threat hung in the air, but Minho simply nodded, understood. We will do everything in our power to save them all. The preparations began immediately. The dragons had to learn how to carry the eggs safely. The shells were crystal and fragile when cold. One wrong move could crack them. Hijin showed them how to wrap each egg in insulation material brought from the colony. The material would protect the eggs during the flight and help keep any remaining warmth inside. It took hours to prepare all the eggs. There were 42 in total. Each one needed careful handling. The dragons worked with a tenderness that surprised the humans. These massive creatures, who could crush boulders with their claws, handled the eggs as if they were made of smoke. The flight back to the colony took place at sunset. The dragons flew slowly, carefully, each one carrying 1 or 2 eggs. They flew in a tight formation, protecting each other from wind and weather. The colonists saw them coming and prepared. Yunji had cleared out the largest warehouse in the colony. She had brought in every incubator, heater, and medical device they had. She had called for help from nearby human settlements. More equipment was arriving by shuttle. When the dragons landed with their precious cargo, they found the warehouse transformed. Rows of incubation pods lined the walls. Each pod was equipped with temperature controls, atmospheric monitors, and medical sensors. It looked like a hospital for giant eggs. The dragons carefully placed their eggs into the pods. Hijin and her medical team worked quickly to activate each incubation system. They set the temperature to rise gradually, not wanting to shock the eggs with sudden heat. Each pod hummed softly as it began its work. Doyen set up monitoring stations. Large screens displayed the vital signs of every egg: temperature, internal pressure, energy readings. If anything went wrong with any egg, alarms would sound immediately. The dragons refused to leave. They settled around the warehouse, each mother and father staying close to their eggs. Some dragons were too large to fit inside, so they kept watch from outside through the windows. They watched the humans work with suspicious but hopeful eyes. Minho and Hyejin worked through the night. They checked each egg personally. They adjusted temperature settings. They made sure every system was working perfectly. Other colonists brought food and water for the dragons. At first, the dragons refused, but eventually hunger won over pride. Days passed. The eggs slowly warmed. The medical screen showed their internal temperatures rising. 40 degrees, 45 degrees, 50 degrees. It was working, but it was slow. Too slow for some eggs. On the 3rd day, one egg began to fail. Its temperature would not rise despite the incubator working at full power. The internal light grew dimmer. Alarms sounded. Yuna, the egg's mother, cried out in anguish. She pressed her face against the incubation pod, trying to see her child inside. Save it, please save it. Yijin rushed over with her equipment. She scanned the egg thoroughly. The shell is damaged. There is a crack we did not see before. It is losing heat through the crack. Can you fix it? Minho asked. I can try, but I have to work directly on the egg. I need to take it out of the pod. This was dangerous. The egg was fragile and cold. But there was no choice. Carefully, very carefully, they lifted the egg from its pod. It was heavy, weighing several 100 pounds. They placed it on a special table. Hyejin examined the crack under magnification. It was small, barely visible, but it went deep into the shell. I need to seal this. If I can stop the heat loss, the egg might stabilize. She mixed a special compound, a medical sealant used for treating injuries in crystalline life forms. With a steady hand, she applied it to the crack. The compound hardened quickly, forming a seal. The dragons watched in tense silence. They placed the egg back in its pod. The incubator resumed heating. For several minutes, nothing changed. Then slowly, the egg's temperature began to rise again. The internal light grew a little brighter. Yuna made a sound that might have been a sob of relief. Thank you, she whispered to Hyejin. Thank you. But the crisis was not over. Other eggs began showing problems. Some had weak shells, some had internal abnormalities. Each problem required a different solution. The human medical team worked around the clock, learning as they went. They had never treated dragon eggs before. There were no textbooks or guides. They had to invent procedures as problems appeared. Jinwoo, the colony's doctor, studied dragon biology from old records. He consulted with the dragons themselves, learning about their species' development process. The dragons, in turn, learned about human medicine. They saw how humans use technology to achieve what magic could not. A kind of understanding began to grow between the two species. The dragons saw that humans, despite being small and weak, had knowledge and skills that were valuable. They solved problems through science and logic. They did not give up even when things seemed hopeless. The humans, for their part, saw that dragons were not the arrogant, isolated creatures they had believed. The dragons loved their children fiercely. They were willing to set aside pride and tradition to save them. They learned quickly and worked hard. 2 weeks after the eggs arrived at the colony, all 42 were stable. Their temperatures had reached 60 degrees and held steady. The internal lights burned bright again. The medical monitors showed healthy development inside each egg. The dragons celebrated in their own way. They flew in formation over the colony, breathing fire into the night sky in patterns of joy and gratitude. The colonists came out to watch, amazed by the beautiful display. But the work was not finished. The eggs still needed months of care before they would hatch. The dragons settled in for a long stay. They made nests around the warehouse. They brought treasures from their mountain to decorate their temporary homes. They began to interact with the colonists more freely. Young dragons like Jiwon became curious about human technology. She asked constant questions. How did the incubators work? How did the monitors detect problems? Could she learn to use the equipment herself? Minho and Doyen began teaching interested dragons about their technology. It started simply, just explaining basic con. 3 months had passed since the dragons brought their eggs to the colony. The warehouse had become a second home to both species. Humans and dragons worked side by side, monitoring the eggs and maintaining the incubation systems. What started as a desperate arrangement had become something more. Minho stood at a monitoring station, checking the development progress of each egg. The screen showed strong vital signs. Internal temperatures were perfect. The hatchlings inside were growing well. In another month, maybe 2, they would begin to hatch. Jiwon, the young pearl-scaled dragon, stood beside him. She had learned to read the monitors as well as any human. Egg 17 is growing faster than the others, she observed. Is that normal? Each hatchling develops at its own pace, Minho explained. As long as the vital signs stay within the safe range, faster or slower does not matter. Egg 17 is healthy. Jiwon nodded, satisfied. She had become Minho's unofficial assistant. She was always asking questions, always wanting to learn more. The other young dragons followed her example. They learned human language better. They studied human technology. They even started helping with colony maintenance tasks. This morning, something unusual happened. Valthrin called a meeting. All the dragons and all the colony leaders gathered in the large square. The old red dragon stood at the center, his voice carrying across the crowd. We came to this place in desperation, Valthron began. We asked for help, expecting perhaps a small favor. But what we received was far more. The humans have saved our children. They have taught us new ways of thinking. They have shown us that strength comes in many forms, not just fire and claw. The dragons rumbled their agreement. Even the most skeptical dragons had come to respect the humans. I have been thinking about the future, Valtheron continued. When our hatchlings emerge, they will need a safe world to grow in. The mountains are far from here. The journey back will be dangerous for newborns. And more than that, I have realized something important. We dragons have lived alone for too long. We have believed we needed no one else, but we were wrong. Yunji, the colony administrator, stepped forward. What are you proposing, Valtheron? A partnership. An alliance between our species. We have resources in the mountains that you need. Rare minerals, crystals, access to territories that only dragons can reach. You have knowledge and technology that we need. Medical science, engineering, different ways of solving problems. Why should we go back to living separately when together we are stronger? The crowd stirred. Dragons and humans alike looked surprised. This was not what anyone had expected. Taiho, the bronze dragon, spoke up. Are you suggesting we stay here? Live among humans permanently? Not all of us, Valtheron said. Some can return to the mountains. Some can stay here. Some can travel between both places. We can build something new. A society where both species work together. Minho felt something stir in his chest. Hope. Excitement. This could change everything. Not just for their colony, but for the entire galaxy. If humans and dragons could form a real alliance, other species would take notice. But not everyone was convinced. A large gray dragon named Sungho stepped forward. He was one of the older dragons who still distrusted humans. And what happens when there is conflict? When human interests and dragon interests do not align. What then? Then we talk, Yunji said firmly. We negotiate. We compromise. That is what partnerships require. Neither side gets everything they want, but both sides get enough. And if talk fails? Sungho challenged. Then we try harder, Minho said. We find creative solutions. We remember that we are stronger together than apart. Is it not worth trying? The debate continued for hours. Dragons and humans both voiced concerns and suggestions. Some worried about territory. Some worried about resources. Some worried about cultural differences. But slowly, gradually, a consensus formed. They would try. They would build something new together. The first practical step was creating a joint council. 3 dragons and 3 humans would make decisions together about matters affecting both species. Valtheron and Yunji would co-lead. Minho was chosen to represent the human technical experts. Yuna, the blue dragon, was chosen to represent the dragon mothers and families. The council met weekly. They discussed everything from resource sharing to education to defense. They did not always agree, but they learned to listen to each other. They learned that different perspectives made better decisions. Doyen proposed an ambitious project, building a communication network that connected the colony and the Dragon Mountains. If we can talk to each other instantly, we can coordinate better, share information, help each other faster when problems arise. The dragons liked this idea. They helped build signal towers in the mountains where humans could not easily reach. They carried equipment to high peaks and deep valleys. The humans designed the technology and taught the dragons how to maintain it. 3 months later, the network was complete. Now a human at the colony could speak directly with a dragon in the mountains. They could share weather information, warn about dangers, coordinate hunting and gathering. The network made cooperation easy and natural. Hyejin started a research center where humans and dragons studied together. Young dragons learned human science. Human students learned dragon lore and magic. They discovered that magic and science were not opposites but different approaches to understanding the universe. Sometimes they could be combined for even better results. One day, a young human named Nari figured out how to use dragon fire to power a new type of engine. The engine was more efficient than anything humans had built before. A week later, a dragon named Minjun learned to use human medical scanners to detect illnesses in dragons before symptoms appeared. Both discoveries came from combining knowledge. But the most important changes were personal. Friendships formed between individuals. Jiwan became best friends with a human girl named Eri. They were the same age, both curious and energetic. They explored the colony and the mountains together, getting into adventures and sometimes trouble. Old Valtheron and Minho spent hours talking about philosophy and engineering. The dragon had lived for thousands of years and had seen empires rise and fall. Minho asked about history. Valtheron asked about technology. They learned from each other. Yuna adopted several human children into her family group. Dragon families were complex, with many adults caring for young ones together. She decided human children deserved the same care. The human parents were surprised at first, but then grateful. Yuna was patient and kind, and she taught the children things no human could teach. 4 months after the partnership began, the first egg hatched. It happened at dawn. Minho was doing his morning check when he heard a cracking sound. He looked at egg 17, the fast-growing one Jiwan had noticed. The shell was breaking from the inside. He immediately activated the emergency alert. Within minutes, every dragon and half the colony had crowded around the warehouse. They watched through windows and doors as the egg continued to crack. A small claw pushed through the shell. Then another. The hatchling was struggling to emerge. This was normal, Hyejin had explained. The struggle helped the hatchling grow stronger. Yuna, the hatchling's mother, watched with tears streaming down her face. She wanted to help but knew she must not. This was something the hatchling had to do alone. Finally, after an hour of effort, the shell broke open. A small dragon emerged, no bigger than a large dog. Its scales were bright blue like its mother's. It looked around with confused eyes, seeing the world for the first time. Yuna made a soft crooning sound. The hatchling heard its mother's voice and stumbled toward her. Its legs were weak and shaky, but it kept moving, determined to reach her. When mother and child finally touched, there was not a dry eye in the crowd. Human and dragon alike wept with joy. This was life. This was hope. This was the future they had all worked so hard to protect. Over the next 2 weeks, all 42 eggs hatched. 42 healthy hatchlings entered the world. Every single one survived. It was unprecedented. In nature, some eggs always failed. But with human medical care and dragon devotion, every hatchling made it. The colony transformed. Baby dragons were everywhere. They were curious and playful, always getting into things. They learned quickly, absorbing information like sponges, and because they grew up around humans, they had no fear or prejudice. To them, humans were just another part of their world. Human children and dragon hatchlings played together. They invented games that worked for both species. They learned each other's languages simultaneously. They formed bonds that would last their entire lives. News of the human-dragon alliance spread across the galaxy. Other species watched with interest and disbelief. Humans and dragons working together? It seemed impossible. But the evidence was clear. The alliance was not only working, but thriving. Other colonies requested visits to see how it worked. Some wanted to form similar partnerships with other species. Minho and Valtheron traveled together to share their experience. They became ambassadors for cooperation and understanding. 1 year after the dragons first came to the colony seeking help, Minho stood on a hill overlooking the settlement. It had grown. New buildings had been constructed to accommodate the PE,